received an announcement about the 28th of September that said we're going one-to-one. We're going to use the iPad 2, and there's a big press release. And it didn't make big press outside of Cathedral. We thought it'd be a big deal maybe throughout Indianapolis and around, but I guess there's a lot of things going on. And so you're here, so you're here to know more about it. My name's Dave Worland, and I'm the principal here at Cathedral. And I'm really going to just act as a kind of starter here. We've got some great people that are going to tell you the details about what we're going to be breaking out here in the next 90 minutes. We'll have plenty of time at the end for questions, and we'll have all the answers. We promise you that. And we're just real excited about not only the announcement, but what's going to be happening really the rest of this semester, next semester, but certainly when school starts next year. And some will be our teachers that will share a little bit of the groundwork that they've laid. So we're going to begin with prayer. So I want to ask Katie Lewis, one of our theology teachers, to come forward to open with prayer.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Provident God, we give you joyful thanks for the opportunity to join together this evening to talk about the transformation in technology and how that will affect our education. As a Holy Cross school, we talk about the life of your servant, the founder of the Brothers of Holy Cross, Blessed Basil Moreau. His vision of service to the church and the world is enlivened in us today and calls us to continue the works entrusted to us. Blessed Basil Moreau was an innovative thinker. Guide us to likewise be pioneering. Bless us in our endeavor as we begin the process of becoming a one-to-one iPad school. Grant us your generous grace to meet the challenges of this task with zeal and generosity. May our family of Cathedral High School grow in unity through this ever stronger bonds of love and service. We ask this grace through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, certainly this is all about our students at Cathedral, but before we can get our students really engaged, our teachers are going to get really prepared. So I'm going to ask Julie Barthel, who's the Director of Professional Development here at Cathedral, to kind of roll out what's been going on, what's going to be happening with our faculty, and let's welcome Julie Barthel.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I just want to say that we've had a lot of technology here at Cathedral, and those parents that have been here for a while know that. So this is not new that we're bringing technology. We're just adding one new piece, the iPads. We have smart boards or some kind of projector in every classroom. We have CPS units. We have multiple labs and portable labs. So I think this has been a great transition, and we've laid a framework and a groundwork. So this isn't so overwhelming for our teachers. It's just one more piece of technology that we're adding. So we're very excited. The energy with our staff and our faculty is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to talk about professional development specifically right now. And when Mr. Worland said that we didn't get a lot of press about this, the one reason we really thought that we might is nobody else is going to do with iPad 2s what we're going to do. You may have heard about some schools that have iPads for their students. In Indiana, there's only one high school right now, and that's Danville High School. But what they've done is they've locked down the iPads, and they're using them for electronic textbooks. And that's going to be one way that we're going to use them, but we're absolutely not going to lock down the iPads for our teachers or for our students. And that's really huge because that's giving our teachers the freedom and to use their professional judgment on what they need to put on these tools for their class and their courses and their students that they have each year. Same thing for the students. They're going to have freedom to put on their iPad what they need for their level of learning and their learning style. And no other schools have taken that on. So that really is different when you talk to other people, and that's really a huge advantage because we're going to be able to differentiate for each course and for every student with the iPad 2. So I think really that's the most exciting piece. Professional development, I think, and not just because I'm the professional development director, is the most important piece to any one-to-one initiative. If the people who are the professionals in that classroom aren't comfortable and can't use that tool and aren't really, really knowledgeable, then it doesn't matter. They're still the ones leading the instruction in that classroom. So all the research that you read says the teachers need the tool at least 1 year prior to when the students are going to have that. And that's exactly what we've done. Our teachers have the iPads in their hands right now. They've had them all year. We had an amazing first day of school with lots of breakout sessions where the teachers were learning them and using them and making videos and taking pictures. So we feel like, again, we've laid the groundwork. We've given the tools to our teachers. We're going to differentiate professional development just like we differentiate learning in the classroom for our students. We have teachers who are very, very comfortable with technology. They already had iPads or iPhones, and we have some teachers who had never seen an iPad or used an iPhone or that type of technology. So we have all kinds of professional development for those teachers to move them along that spectrum and get them all very comfortable when their students come next year with this same tool. We've been reading about best practices from other schools around the country. We've visited other schools that have had one-to-one initiatives. So we've tried to, again, do lots of research, lay the groundwork, learn from each other so far this year, and that will continue throughout the rest of the year. We had an amazing session yesterday. The teachers, after the PSAT, were allowed to leave and go home or go grade papers or work in their classrooms, get their grades ready, which are due next Tuesday. 42 teachers chose to come to an iPad session and learn more about technology and spend 2 hours learning about, this tool. So I thought that was really amazing that, they're all really busy, crazy right now trying to do the best work they can for your students, and they chose to come to that to learn about this. So that was really exciting yesterday. Something else that we've done, we've made a technology integration team of teachers, and those are 3 lead teachers from every department who have had a little extra training and gotten some more professional development and some more books, and several of them went to something called a Laptop Institute last summer in Memphis, Tennessee. So they're kind of the leaders in each department. And I've definitely learned that high school teachers are very departmentally focused. They want to learn about their subject and how this technology can be adapted to their subject, and they love to learn from each other. I think we all do. We want to. It's less threatening to learn from our colleagues and our peers. So this technology integration team is going to be very important to take their knowledge and their skills and go back to their departments and, again, help all those teachers move along, because even in each department, we've got some superstars that are already on board and using apps already in their classrooms, and we have some that are still learning how to turn it on and how to manipulate it. So we have lots of levels of learning going on with our teachers. I have several members of our technology integration team here tonight, and I'm going to introduce some of them. We're going to actually come up and share some of the apps that they're using right now already in their classroom. I have Patty Edwards. She's here from our math department. Patty, if you go ahead and stand up. You don't have to come up here now, but we'll just introduce everybody. And she's going to talk to you a little bit later. Ryan Bonsbach is here from social studies. Katie Lewis is also on our technology team that led our prayer today. Kim Jamel is from our world languages department. Debbie Boyd is here somewhere, also on our technology team from our world languages department. Did I miss anybody? Oh, sorry, April Long. She's an English teacher, is going to talk to you a little bit. So, again, we have 3 teachers from every department, and some of these teachers tonight are going to come up here and share some of the resources that they're already using. I think when I talked about Danville High School, that they're using it for electronic textbooks, Mrs. Ford is going to talk to you a little bit later about the research that we're doing, trying to find out where we are with that. But one thing that we want to share, and April's going to give you some examples in a little bit, are the ebooks. I think that's probably one of the most exciting things that a iPad 2 can offer are the ebooks. Some of you guys might have Kindle readers or Sony readers or things like that. Again, remember, we're not locking this down. So if we have students that are reading the same book, but they're at different reading levels, they're going to be able to adapt that, and they're going to be able to do things with the vocabulary. Or there's an app called Lit2Go that you can get audio books, and so they can actually listen to the book while they're reading it. So April's going to share some things that she's going to do and already doing in her English classes right now about ebooks. So please welcome April Long.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to try to just show you a few basic things that I think you're going to find really interesting about what you can still do online on an iPad with the iPad. There's a lot of apprehension, especially in my department. We love for our kids to take notes when they read. We push active reading. And what's going to happen when it's on a computer screen and I can't write? So they've already thought of that, obviously. So I teach Huckleberry Finn, so that's where I'm starting today. So that first bookshelf that you saw are the books that you download. Huckleberry Finn is free. There's a website that's called 24,000 Free Books. We've found many of our, or it's an app, I'm sorry, it's an app, not a website. We've found many of our summer reading books on there already. I've found, obviously, Huckleberry Finn that I teach. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like and a few of the things that your students might be engaging in the classroom. It looks like a real book. If any of you have e-readers, you're going to be familiar with this already. But to find the start, if we are at a table of contents, this is not my book. All right, so this is my book. You can see I've already done a few things to show you, but table of contents here. So anywhere you want to start, scrolling works just like any other touch screen. And if you just want to, as Huckleberry Finn starts, the first thing I've made a note on, and so if I wanted to know what that was, I've got my notes already saved. But starting from the beginning. Okay, so if you're reading and if you're reading out loud in class, if you're reading at home, wherever it is, and something stands out to you that you don't know, that you need to know, let's just say it's a word that you need to know the definition. When I click on considering, it's going to give me these options. You can drag with this if you want it longer, but if I just want to know something about this word, I've got options for looking it up to know what it means. It's that easy. As Julie was talking about with the differentiating learning, we give vocabulary tests in our class that are a set list of words, but when someone's reading a book, you never know what level. You know, some kids might have a different vocabulary that they are at a higher level than others, but this way it's totally personalized for the student. What they need to look up, they can look up. You know, in our junior English specifically, the same academic book is required as an honors book in the summer. Those are two different reading levels, but they can have their own vocabulary list. They can look up whatever they need to know. So dictionary is one option. Something else when that popped up, let's say I want to make a note. If I want to highlight it, that can be done. If I want all of my characters, which I've done in blue, to be a certain color, if I want this to be in yellow or if I want it to be in another color, that's an option. And if I want to make a note about that, then it's on the same page. My keyboard pops up. It's super easy to type, whatever you want it to say. And then it makes a note on the side. And if I want to be working on those notes later, if I want to stop here, I have to go do something, I bookmark my page. That's not what I meant to do. If you want to go back to your table of contents, okay, this is where if I want to pick my book back up, I'm on resume, it goes back to my bookmark page. If I'm here and I want to know all the notes that I've taken, this is where I can go right here, and this will show you all of the notes that you've already taken. And if I also need those notes to be somewhere else, I can email them to myself, which is super easy as well, right there. Also, if you really need to be taking more thorough notes, let's say for an assignment they're reading a chapter and they're marking things as they go, but I need them to send me something so that I know what they read. Can you summarize what you read last night? Include a couple of words that you needed to look up. Whatever it is, they can easily have their notes section open. Right here, they can type the summary, and they could, oh, sorry. You get to see how it all works. Whatever they want to do with that, they can save it to their iPad to show in class the next day, Or let's say I want to know what they did that night so that I can gather all of this information and know how my class is going to go the next day. And I tell them all to email their summaries to me that night. They can email me straight from the notes. So there's a lot of good things happening with the ebooks, and as Julie said as well, Lit2Go is audio, so whatever kind of learner your student is, they can be listening and looking. They can then go back and look a second time and take notes. There's so many options to personalize this for their learning style. I think it's just going to be so beneficial. Did I miss anything? Thanks. Sorry if I went too long.
That means we could do everything that April just showed you, the copying, the highlighting, the summarizing. So as long as we can save something as an EPUB, so let's say even a student wrote something that we thought was a great example as a speech or a debate, we could scan it, bring it into an app, save it as an EPUB. It would go on the bookshelf for all the students to see. And again, now we're looking at real work that our own students did. And this could be used in all, across all curriculums. We could do the same thing with an economics book or a biology book, not just in English. So. This is Jamel.
Hi, good evening. One of the websites that I'm already excited about is called Flashcardlet, and if any of you have iPads or iPhones, you can already, some of your kids are already doing these. But so I was playing around in there and looking for things and thinking, okay, well, that's cool. I can create flashcards for my textbook. And I decided to just go looking. And you can download from Quizlet. I typed in the name of our textbook. I'm not going to do it all right now. But I typed in the name of our textbook. There was probably 8 or 10 copies or sets of flashcard for every single unit and lesson in my Spanish textbook, Spanish 1 and Spanish 2 already made. So these, I'd love to tell you that I worked all day in creating them, but I didn't. Oh, the really cool thing, too, is you can star them. Like, you could star the ones that you miss, which I think would make the most sense if you're optimistic, because I'm assuming hopefully they'll miss less than they get right. Maybe that'd be different at the beginning. And you can do them English, any order, random order, original order, alphabetical. And they can customize this every single time they study them. So now I'm going to start studying. Okay. Alto, this is the chapter we're on right now. Mrs. Ford was in my class today, so you might remember these. Let's see if you know any Mrs. Ford. No, just kidding. Artístico. And then, sorry, I'm going through them because, of course, I know what they mean. But then you turn them over. And you could also do them English to Spanish. What I always recommend is that you start off Spanish to English, but then once you start knowing them, you need to do them English to Spanish. By the way, if any of your kids have foreign language, they need to be doing them English to the foreign language, because we're going to make you write the foreign words on a test, not the English words very often. So anyway, so these were already made, and those were kind of interesting. But to go back to what Miss Long was talking about, again, we'd love to tell you that she created these today, but these were already out there. These were flashcards already made for all the characters of Huck Finn, and it tells you, a little, oh, that's the lawyer, even pretty obscure characters. It had 41. I didn't even know Huck Finn had 41 characters. It's been a while since I read it, but so depending on how detailed your teacher wants to go, it had lit terms and and how they were displayed in Huck Finn. But the point of this is, I'm trying to use this technology, and it does take up some of my time to learn. Like, okay, I'm going to admit this is a little embarrassing, but since I'm over 40, it took me a while just to learn how to close things and open things and slide things. Like that wasn't super natural for me. And so I am spending time doing that. So I'm like, I'm not going to recreate the wheel. If those flashcards are out there, I'm going to use the ones that are out there. If there's something out there, I'm going to use it. And I think that's how kids think, too. And, with what Ms. Long was talking about earlier, yes, they've always been able to do everything she just said with a pen and paper, but let's just be realistic. How many kids are reading a book? How many of you read when you're reading a book for pleasure? You're like, I don't know if I know what that word means. I know I should go look it up, but I'm sitting here in my living room and my dictionary's back there, But who doesn't look it up now? I mean, when I have my e-reader out, I look up all my words, and I have a list at the end of every, I take to book club the next month. I'm like, these are the vocab words I learned from, just for my pleasure. I promise I never did that before on pen and paper, even though you could, So these are out there for the kids, and I just think this is how they think, and this is how they function. And by the way, because I told you it was hard for me to just learn to slide and open and close, and like I'm stuck here. How do I get out of this thing? And I kept having to turn it off to get out. It was kind of funny. But today I was playing a game with a kid during resource that he loves to come over and play on my iPad, and we were competing against each other, and it was really funny because it's one I've played a lot, and I was like, how do you open that? And I kept touching it, how do you open it? He's like, you just slide it that way, Mrs. Jamel. I'm like, okay. I mean, and he had never seen the game before, it was just funny. It's just so natural for them, but it's still easy for me too. And then the other one I want to show you I thought was just really fun was this one. I thought, well, lots of times in class, especially with freshmen, we have little things, in the book or little made-up dialogues, and I say, okay, make up a dialogue, and you're introducing him to your class, whatever, whatever the vocab is right then, or you're going to go for a run in the park and, exercise it, whatever our, vocab is. And so, and they have to make up the dialogue, and I have them work on it for 3 or 4 minutes, and I say, just want to warn you, about 3 or 4 of you are going to get to present to the class when we're finished. And they do get kind of nervous. I always tell them that in our classroom you have to be able to stand up, and you're going to make some mistakes, and we're babies and we're learning, because it's really like tiny young person Spanish that we're learning in Spanish 1. So I try to put them at ease, but sometimes I just see them stand up and they're like, hola, ¿cómo estás? And they're super nervous, and I remember feeling that way in high school. Believe it or not, I used to be kind of quiet and shy. Not really. But I found this today, or Katie Lewis helped me find it actually yesterday, but it was playing around with it today. Well, they could have this on their table, tape their dialogue, and then bring their iPad and plug it into my smart board, and I don't know how this will work.
Buenos días, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y cómo está usted, señor? Bien. ¿Hiciste la tarea? Sí, yo tienes que hacer mucha tarea.
I don't know. Anyway, so you get to pick your characters. You missed the part where it laughed. It was funny.
That was pretty simple, wasn't it?
Things like that happen too. But I mean, they had comic books. They had books that your kids could make up, but I like the ones with the comic books and the sock puppets because it kind of had a context. You could pick the picture and pick the context and pick your puppets who each have different funny faces and funny voices. And then I feel like when they go up there and they just play their dialogue in front of the class, like Miss Long was pointing out, do you ever tape your voice when you're taping your voicemail outgoing message and you listen to it and you're like, oh my God, it sounds so stupid, start over. And they're just uncomfortable, but these are funny voices anyway, so it kind of takes away, they go up there and yes, it is their work, and we are going to point out, remember that verb would be estás there, but it's just a lot less threatening for them, and and a lot more fun, I think, too. So that was just 2 apps that we've already, and if your kids, I was talking about them today, some of the kids are already using them. One kid tried to turn in those flashcards as homework, didn't count. But I'm like, I know where you got those. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Kim. Next, Brian Bonsbach is going to come talk about how we talked about that we have these tools a year in advance, and we're researching right now, trying to get ready, because now we know the students are going to be coming as well, so he's going to talk a little bit about how he's getting ready for next year. We can close out Kim's puppet show if you want.
I'm going to watch this puppet show. I'm actually the tell part of the show and tell. I have nothing up here for you in the sense that I've kind of charged myself with finding a way to remove the actual paper, the book, from all the courses that I teach. I teach 4 different courses here in the social studies. And it's a little bit easier for me probably than some of the others, but I believe with a little bit of work, I can make all those textbooks disappear, the hard copies. Okay? Yeah. Did you get any of that applause? I didn't think so. Now, the one thing about history is, unless something happens or or something new has been discovered, what was written in that book that I got last year was written in the same book that was written in 1950 for everything prior to 1950. Okay? So that hasn't changed a whole lot. And through apps and a little bit of research on the web, I can find everything that's in my history books, my psych books, my sociology books. Plus, I can take them other places much faster, much easier. Okay? So the hope is that, if possible, whatever expense you might spend here can be saved by not having that with the textbooks. So that's one of my goals, obviously. If I've ever taught your children, you probably know that I'm the king of projects here at Cathedral High School, in the sense that I make them use technology all the time. Okay? However, with the iPad, now they can do it all in one place. Okay? I have them do Excels and the PowerPoints and the Prezis and all that stuff. But I also make them do movies. Okay? They're now doing jingles for one of my econ assignments. They used to have to go other places to do those. Now this can all take place right here. The movies can be made right here. They don't have to have any other software, any other devices. It's all right here. So my courses have now just become so much easier for me and for the students with the implementation of this iPad. To show you how simplistic this might be, I'll be the first to admit that I don't know everything about this, and I probably will never know everything about this. Okay? But the students know so much. Okay? They know so much. So I charged one of my students, who probably would self-admit that she doesn't know the most about econ. I said, bring me some apps. Okay? Not just bring me some apps, but how can you implement those into the curriculum? Okay? I want you to be me. Find the apps that work with the things that we've been doing. Okay? Within a matter of days, she brought me 3. Okay? Probably things that she knew very little about, but she brought me 3 that I'm going to use in my econ class moving forward. Okay? That will open up their world to econ more so than that book ever could. Okay? For them. It's a stock market project. We do the stock market game, so they're automatically out there already. Okay? But this is stuff that they know how to do. Okay? We're not probably going to push them initially any further than what we are going, but we're going to ask them. Actually, what ends up happening is they come back and say, hey, Mr. B, look what I found. Okay? And then they're self-learning, okay? And they're teaching not only us, but they're teaching each other. My courses are very much about collaboration, where they do work with each other a lot. Okay? And when they can start teaching each other, they learn a lot more. And that's kind of the goal, is to be a guide, provide them with places to go. Self-discovery is huge. Okay? They feel better about themselves if they think that they've done things on their own, as opposed to, here it is, remember it, spit it back out to me on the day of the test. Okay? This kind of device allows them to do that. Okay? I use it now probably as much as anybody. I do allow them onto their iPhones, onto their iPads, onto their laptops. Okay? As soon as I say, get out your laptop or your iPad, okay, every single one of them, the focus changes. They're immediately into whatever it is that we're doing. Okay? If I say, get out your book, the process is a lot longer, I promise you. Okay? And then they'll say, well, what page, or what am I looking for, or should I read this, do I have to read that? You don't have to do that with the iPad or the laptop. You say, okay, this is what we're looking for, and immediately they know how to go find stuff like that. They find stuff much easier here than they ever will in the book. Okay? If you have my world history book, it's 700 pages long. Okay? I say, go find the Peloponnesian War. Where's the first place they go look? Back to the back of the book, and then they look for that page, and then they scan that page. Here, it's probably 10 seconds, and it's right in front of them, and now they can even query what's on their screen. So it is going to speed up the process. It's going to engage them a lot more. And like I said, my goal is I'm taking every lesson I have. I promise you it will be digital. It'll be electronic. I will make sure I find something so they are not carrying around that 15-pound book on a regular basis, because they won't need to, at least for my particular classes. As I transition over here to Mrs. Edwards, to give you an example of how we use this, there's something called upside-down learning, flipped learning, reverse learning. Somebody in our department, Mr. No, who's majored in Renaissance art, and I do an art project Mr. Ernst does an art project. Well, we've asked Mr. No, who has quite the knowledge in this, to provide us with some background knowledge of Renaissance art. He has taken the iPad. He has done a recording of himself providing information. Okay? Well, that's emailed to us, and then we can put it out on the web for the students. They watch it at home. That's their homework now, instead of having to go home and read. So they watch it at home, so we can do other things in the class at the time. My students will actually do some Renaissance painting. They will actually do the painting. But they can get some of that other knowledge from another teacher that doesn't have the opportunity to come into my classroom because he's teaching his stuff. But they can still get information from him. I can get information from him. It's always available to the students because that teacher could take 15 or 20 minutes with his iPad at home, record something that he loves, and then it's out there for everybody. Okay? This is something that we're going to try to implement, in many parts of the schools, as reverse teaching idea, where their homework is kind of the stuff that we used to do in the classroom. So now in the classroom, it's all engaged activities, collaborative work, as opposed to doing what I'm doing now, standing up here and just talking to you. Okay? So we hope to change that. Okay? And Miss Edwards has a lot more information on that because she's like the queen of our reverse learning at this point. Okay?
Good evening, everyone. I love technology. I use almost all the technology that I can in my classroom. About 8 years ago, I got my first piece of technology other than the computer, and that was the smartboard. And I thought it was just a blessing. Then we got this thing called an Elmo, and it's just this little camera type thing. And I thought it was a blessing. Now we have this thing, and this iPad is definitely, in my opinion, the way to go. For those of you who don't know me, I have a child here. I have 2 graduates, and then I have a freshman here. She already has the iPad and is using it. The beauty of the iPad is that it can go with you anywhere. It can go with you. We happen to have the iPad that has the phone service. It costs us $25 extra. I think it's $25 extra a month. But if we travel a lot, she can take her iPad and she can email her teachers, she can write a paper, she can pull up notes, she can surf the web, she can do any of these apps that they've mentioned up here. She has the information that she needs with her 100% of the time. Now, I'm not an app person. I am more, how can I get my information to them? So this year when we went to the iPad Institute, I heard this thing called reverse teaching. And I thought, wow, what a way to teach. This is the way to teach. It always breaks my heart when I come up and a student says, but my tutor taught me this. And I think, well, that's so sad, because why am I not the one that's being able to teach you? Well, unfortunately, we all run out of time. And because we run out of time, the kids need help, and they may not be able to get to me. They might have something after school. They might have something before school. So my whole goal was, I am going to do my lectures online. Initially, they told us, okay, you're a teacher. You're allowed to steal. Well, not really, but you're allowed to steal tapes of other people. Well, I started researching and found all these tapes and thought, they're not me. They aren't me. I want me on there. Now, there are some great sites. I don't know if any of you have heard of Khan Academy. Khan Academy was established by a very intelligent man who, I wish I could remember all the specifics, but what he did was he decided that he was going to put short 15 to 20-minute tapes online, and then people for free, it's run by the Bill Gates organization, people for free can go and learn these different subjects, and it concentrates, I think, a great deal on math and science. So I went in to look at these thinking, well, maybe I can start my reverse teaching with that. And the concept behind reverse teaching is that you will go in and the kids will watch or get the lecture at home. They'll go home, and for 15 or 20 minutes, which is about the average span of time that somebody can concentrate on somebody talking, they'll watch it at home. Then when they come into school, they have me there not to lecture to them, but while they're doing the homework that they would normally be doing by themselves at home with no help, pulling their hair out of their head and then crying to mom and dad say, I have no idea what you're doing. This was 25 years ago. So now what they'll do is they'll listen to me, they'll take notes, and then when they come to class, those 20 problems that I wanted them to do, some of them very difficult, they'll have me and they'll have their peers. And I can't tell you enough, kids learn more from their peers than they do from us as adults. They respect their peers, or most of them. Their peers understand where their confusion is. I can't tell you how many times I stand up in the classroom and I'll be saying something and it's not connecting, and the student will say, oh, this is what she means. And they're understanding where the how to connect the dots. But what I'd like to show you is a couple things that I've used. Unfortunately, when I went to use reverse teaching this year, I decided that it needed to be me. So I researched and researched. I spent hours and hours trying to figure out how I could get myself online. And I figured it out. Right here. Now, on this, you'll notice if I tap it, what this is I got what we call a Livescribe Pen. And with my Livescribe Pen, I was able to write my notes. And the kids play this at home. And then as I'm writing, what happens is when they hit start, it all fades. And then they'll start hearing my voice. As they hear my voice, they'll see their writing, going along as if I'm actually lecturing them. And I time myself to be about 15 minutes. Well, what happened is the kids got home, and I was so excited thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to be really able to help the kids. And it didn't come up on a lot of the kids' computers. Anybody that had a certain type of cute computer or a computer that was too old, it didn't work. So we worked and we tried to figure out, and the kids were telling each other what to do, and we still ended up with about 25% of the kids not able to get the lecture. So I had to put it on hold temporarily and sadly, but I can still do this. And what I will be able to do is next year when they all have iPads, all they'll do is go to my website, they'll click on it, and guess what? They get me. Now, that's not the only way they can get me. If I had somebody in my classroom who came in with the iPad, they could actually see a lesson on the smartboard, because I love the smartboard. Here's why I love the smartboard. Since I've had a smartboard, I have been uploading my class notes to my website. So after every day, I take class notes for each class, and I download them onto my website. The beauty of this is I don't have a student that comes up to me and says, I need you to teach me this. Now, they'll still come in and ask for help because they haven't heard my voice. But what happens is, you can't see this, but this is on my website, and this is one of my day's notes. It says up top October 6th, and it's my notebook. And I'm able to do this because I have a smartboard. But the beauty of it is it connects all the pieces. This is using the smartboard, the iPad, and this is using my CD of my book. So do they need to bring their book to my class? No. And I'll be honest, at the beginning of the year, I was very frustrated because we got new books this year. And the publishers have decided that they're not going to make it easy for us to share the books with the kids. You can't get a CD anymore. What I can do, though, is I can take my camera from my from my smartboard, and I can photo the page that I need, and I can put it on my class notes. So the kids didn't have their book, but there was a problem that I wanted. We were talking about, this particular day, we were talking about constraints and figuring out maximum and minimum value. Well, I wanted to point out certain items in the book. So I took a picture, and we talked about it. Then, if you scroll down, you'll see we then talked about what it all meant, and I went through and I showed them how to graph it. And because of the smartboard, I can color code everything. I do this on a regular basis. Then I can come down, and I was able again. I had a piece of graph paper. Here's another beautiful thing about this is that was used with an Elmo. So right now I have used a CD, I have used the iPad, I have used the Elmo, and I'm missing one, the smartboard. Okay? So 4 pieces of technology, and I'll tell you, 9 years ago when I started at Cathedral, I couldn't even sign on to a computer. So I have learned a great deal from the kids. the kids, when I'm frustrated, and it doesn't happen as much anymore, but when I first started, I get all flustered and I turn beet red. And if you had known me when I was 18, I would have never been able to stand up here and talk to you. So I, unlike Kim, was very shy. So it's kind of funny that I'm standing up here talking to you today. But this is very exciting to me. When I travel now, my child won't have to carry all her books. She can have her notes. My child needs audiobooks. She can get audiobooks here on free. We can use apps on a regular basis if she needs to. The thing where they can annotate that Miss Long showed you is amazing. It's absolutely, and actually we've already had the ebooks at home, and my daughter has used them. So I know it seems like it may be an extra expense, but it's an expense that's actually going to lessen the expenses in other areas. And it is a tool that no matter if you're the top of the class or the lower part of the class, I think everybody here will find true value in it. Thank you. Mr. Landeros is now going to come up and talk to you about the student use of iPads.
Good evening. If anybody of you know me rather well, this is my app. I really appreciate everyone coming tonight. This is a pretty important event for the school. It's something that the school has been undertaking. I came here 7 years ago, and about 4 years ago I was really pressed by the board and by the technology team on the board. They really wanted us to plan for going to one-to-one. You know, at the time we did not have the money to do it. Financially, you know, we were a big school. There was just a lot of things that still needed to be done. 2 years ago, the board made it a mandate in the strategic plan that they wanted the school to go one-to-one. So at that point in time, you know, remember, we started 4 years ago planning for that, doing a lot of infrastructure upgrades. And in the past 5 years, we've almost put in over $1 million worth of infrastructure. And that's come through a lot of different funding. It's amazing where we've come and where we're at now. And we're still going to keep on growing. A couple of things I want to get to the nitty-gritty. Number one, why do we choose iPads over laptops? Pretty simple. Everyone knows about the weight and the battery. The speed of the internet is truly amazing. How fast people can do this. You should just see how fast our teachers, even the ones that struggled in the beginning, how comfortable they're getting just to navigate with the iPads. I can't even imagine what's going to happen when the kids get the iPads. And that's the freedom that's different than the laptops. The other part that I think is really neat, and I want to go ahead and show this to everybody because most people never knew this. There's a little program here, and actually this is something that we're going to do. There's a little program here called X2 Client. Now some of you parents know or may not know that students could get access to their files from home. It's called a remote desktop server. Many of you actually have this access at home or through your business, whether it's called a Sigtures Client. You know, there's a lot of names for it. I'm going to show you that besides all of these apps, we're going to go ahead and log in, and I'm going to get it on my iPad in Windows Desktop. They're going to be able to access their email. They're going to be able to run Word. They're going to be able to run the internet. So I'm just going to go here, and everybody's familiar with this. I'm just going to go and access my Microsoft Outlook like you would do it on your desktop. So those of you that said, well, you could do a lot more on a laptop, you could do a lot on a laptop. But I could get everything on an iPad plus 400,000 apps. You can't do that on an iPad or on a laptop. That was a major difference. One other thing, too, that happened that you may not understand. Apple, 2 months ago, had indicated they have their low version of the MacBook laptop called a MacBook. That is no longer going to be in production. That's an $800, $900 laptop that is being eliminated from their production line. And the reason for that is the iPads started to eat away from their sales of that unit. So they decided to go up to the MacBook Pro. That's a $1,300 laptop. We did not want to go that route because we knew that would be too expensive. Remember, 40% of our students are in financial aid. That would put an unbearing weight on our advancement team to raise that much money. So we needed to have a stopgap. The iPad served that solution. I was asked by a lot of people, how can we make this work? Two things that teachers have mentioned. We are letting the students run and the teachers run and install what apps they need to learn. There is no other school that's doing what we're doing. Call us a renegade, but here's one thing that says in our vision. We want to be the model school. We are doing things that no one else is going to do. We're going to do it great, and your students are the best students to do it because we want to show other schools and other students how to do this. So realize the excitement level here is unbelievable. I mean, we have one teacher, Ken Jensen. Many of you know he's a master religion teacher here. He is completely addicted. If you know how organized he is, he just can't believe how much literature there's available on the iPad. He can't wait to get this in his hands for his kids. So those are some of the excitement things that I want to do. I want to cover a couple other things. You know, we talked about the ability to have remote desktop on the laptop. You know, email, incredible access to email and communications. Some of you know that the iPad can play Flash. Now what that means is there's some videos on the internet that you can't play on an iPad. Well, Adobe realized this, so they made an application that's going to help play Flash videos on an iPad. It's called the Flash Media Server. We're going to play that. We're going to have that here for our students. It's one of the things that we're going to be testing this year. So even if there's a Flash video, for example, biology has a lot of videos online that are Flash-based. The iPads can't play it. We're going to make a stopgap to make that playable on the iPad so the students can still do that. One other thing, too, that's very important. Everybody's worried about games on the iPads. One of the things that the teachers are going to be doing is teaching what's called being a digital citizen. It's very important for us not only to teach the students how to use this academically, because we all know they could do it recreationally and socially. We have to teach them how to do it academically and professionally. That is the next stage for them to be prepared when they go to college. That is something our teachers are learning. They're going to be going through programs of what happens when they're distracted. How do you know that they're really not playing Angry Birds, just have their thing muted, and they're taking notes at the same time? These are the things that are going to be new and difficult for our teachers, but we're teaching them through professional development. If a student wants to pass a note in a class, you know they're passing a note. We're teaching them how to know when they're playing a game. Those are some of the things that we're going to be doing. A couple of other things. I wanted to introduce a gentleman by the name of Ryan, the gentleman right here from Elan Technologies. He's going to be Elan Technologies is going to be our support company that's going to help us with the iPads and the laptops or any type of Apple equipment. They did a great job. They just finished the installation and the deployment of the laptops for the teachers. We did this in about 2.5 weeks, and they did an impeccable job. When students have issues with their iPads, we have a technology support center upstairs that was just created this year. It's a room right by the library. It's easily accessible. Students, if they have issues with their iPads, they can bring it in for repair. Elan Technologies will pick it up for us and they'll also return it. We will have checkout iPads for students that have any type of damage or repairs. There will be an iPad checkout. One thing about the iPad loaners, they will be locked down. We want to make sure that the students are responsible for taking care of their equipment. So realize that we know if we give a loaners, they're going to be encouraged, I'll just leave it home. Their iPad is their education. It's theirs. What we will do is have a supplement in case they forget it, in case it's damaged, or realize we're not going to make it easy for the students just because they forget their iPads. And the other part a lot of students are worried about is power. They have a 10-hour battery. So realize that if they charge it at night, it's going to be ready the next day. And we're going to have charging stations for students to make that available, but realize they shouldn't have to worry about too much about charging, but we're going to make that accessible to them. The last thing is we're going to also have a student technology team. Those students are going to be the leaders that are going to help the students next year. We're going to handpick them to help them with the deployment with the iPads, but they're also going to have these special student leaders that are going to help other teachers and students in their classrooms. Leadership roles. How to be. Those are the students we're going to have make sure that they role model what it means to be a leader and make sure these students are doing what they're supposed to be doing with these iPads. We do want them to have some fun time too. We all know that there's recreation, but when is it appropriate? So that's some of the things that we're trying to accomplish. It's a huge undertaking for the school. It's very transformational, but quite honestly, in 3 years, I can't wait till this just becomes operational. It's just one of those things. Many of you already have this at home. Many of you use this in the businesses. We're going to be right there. It's very rare that the school isn't cutting edge on something. This is one of the things that we're going to be cutting edge, but at the same time, we have master teachers that know their curriculum, and we're not going to forget who those teachers are, and we're going to make sure the students respect that teaching. We're just adding another tool. Now, later on tonight, we know we have a lot of questions. I hope that I answered most of them when it comes to why we had a laptop, the direction, the support, who to go to for what they need. The next thing that many of you want to know is about price. I'm going to introduce you to Dwayne Emery. from our student. He's our vice president for enrollment management, and he also takes care of financial aid. Dwayne Emery, thank you.
All right, we had a lottery today to see who got to come and talk about the cost, and I won. Isn't that exciting? As Raleigh said, my name is Dwayne Emery. I'm our Vice President for Enrollment Management. It's a mouthful to say admissions and tuition assistance primarily. I'm not a classroom teacher. I'm not the person who sets the cost of the device. I'm a communicator. So I'm going to communicate about some cost-related matters. And I'm actually going to try to use the iPad a little bit in my presentation to you. So I'm going to see if it works. I'm going to see if the email I sent from, you can leave it over there, Ethan. That's my son, Ethan, who's got my iPad right now. I sent an email from my iPad that I had sent last night to our CFO to myself, and then I thought, I'm sitting over here on my phone, and I'm thinking, I'll just try to send it up to Julie's iPad, which we're using up here, so hopefully that'll work in just a little bit. If it won't, Ethan's going to run my iPad up here, and I'm going to hook in my iPad, so we'll see if it works. I'm kind of a novice with the iPad thing, but I love it. Ethan teaches me a lot. Okay, how much does this thing cost? And you have the sheet in front of you, and I'm going to talk from that primarily. $499 plus sales tax for a 16 gig Wi-Fi only iPad 2. In other words, I think Mrs. Edwards talked earlier about the fact that she has one that's cellular capable, so that adds, give or take, $25 a month, I think. Where you can certainly go that option as a family if you want, but what you need is the 16 gig iPad 2. That's what you need. And then we can talk about other things that you probably should have, or that we would recommend that you have. We certainly would recommend a case. Now, you can buy Apple cases, and you can buy OtterBox cases, and you can buy all kinds of stuff if you want. And you can spend a little bit of money, or you can spend a lot of money on cases. We believe we're going to have a cathedral case that's probably going to have something cathedral on it even, for give or take $25. Samples. Now, I can't use this because I have an iPad 1 that I got passed down to me from my boss. But if I had an iPad 2, I could use this one, and it has the Cathedral logo embroidered on it. Talk to Steve Helmick about that for me. But this is a nice case, and this would cost you give or take $25. I don't know that you can buy a case of this quality for that price anywhere else. There's also, some of the folks over here are using cases that are a little different than this. Got the lovely demonstration team. And that's a case with a built-in keyboard. And we expect that we might be able to provide those for sale at a discounted rate as well. Some of the cost on this stuff, folks, quite candidly, is evolving every day. Raleigh sent me an email today that he had gotten from Apple, and some of the things that they're doing relative to pricing probably are going to change this week or next week or something. So some of this is evolving, but we also are going to suggest strongly that you get a warranty, and we would suggest that you get a warranty with damage protection coverage. It's one thing for the thing to stop working, which probably is much less likely than somebody dropping it down the student staircase, or leaving it on the roof of their car and driving off, or dropping a drink on it at lunch, or something of that nature. So, Ethan, be careful with the water back there, remember? I'm just joking. It's an example. I told him, don't spill the water on my iPad. And then there will also be a technology fee. Freshmen right now have a technology fee, but there'll be a technology fee at each grade level. For the first year, it'll only be for freshmen through juniors, though, because they're the students who are required to have the iPad 2s. With that technology fee, though, we're going to include 3 of the applications or 3 of the apps that students definitely will need. So it'll be included in that technology fee. And those are Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. And those are the equivalent to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Okay? So those will be included. Where are you going to buy this? Well, we thought we were going to talk to you about one option, but that might be changing, so we hear from Apple. So really, at this point in time, probably the Apple online store or any of the hundreds of other retail outlets that sell Apple devices, right? It's not, you guys know where to buy these things. If you don't, come see us. We'll let you know where you can go buy them. We'll send you to, any number of big box stores or small stores anywhere around where you can buy them. I would tell you, though, given the changes that are taking place, I know some of you are going to want to run right out and buy this thing for Christmas for your child. I would tell you I'd probably hold off on that, quite frankly, because I would not be surprised if there's an iPad 3 that comes out sometime in the spring. I can't tell you that officially, but I wouldn't be surprised. And if you know when the iPad 2 came out relative to the iPad 1, I guess you call it, it won't surprise us. If you buy an iPad 2, though, you're going to be fine. Raleigh has assured me you're going to be fine for several years with the iPad 2. So don't get panic-stricken or anything when the iPad 3 comes out and think your child's device that you just bought 6 months ago has become obsolete. That's not going to be the case by any means. My iPad 1 will work just fine. Now, it doesn't have a camera. It doesn't have some of the other things that I'd want it to have, but I'd go, obviously, iPad 2 or higher. So worth thinking, especially if any of you have 8th graders looking at Cathedral, it may be graduation gift kind of thing, maybe. Who knows? We're thinking about that. Believe it or not, I had families thinking we were going this route last spring, and they were calling me, asking me if they should buy a MacBook or an iPad for a graduation gift. And I said, don't buy either one yet because we don't know which one we're using. So, okay, now I get to see if I can be tricky and see if the mail works and see if... Ah, it does. Okay. One of the things that I'm going to talk about is really what's going to happen relative to tuition assistance, because some people in this room are recipients of tuition assistance, and kind of how might that work? And we are actually going to try to provide some support there, and we've actually kind of figured out how we're going to do it. So I'm going to use the... Okay, so this is a merge letter, so I just did a PDF of a letter that I developed in Word and sent it to our CFO, I think last night, so he could take a look at it. And this is a letter that's probably going to go on Monday to families who receive tuition assistance this year who are freshman and sophomore students, okay? Need-based tuition assistance, okay? Presidential scholarship by itself doesn't count, but if you receive any need-based tuition assistance, you'll get a letter that looks like this. And the things to really look at are really points 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the font looks a little weird because it didn't transfer over. Some of that's in a bold font that didn't convert properly for some reason. But basically what we're going to say is if you receive need-based tuition assistance next year, so I'm kind of working with current year reality, projecting what's going to happen next year. If you receive need-based tuition assistance, we're going to say, okay, what percentage of our tuition itself, $11,240 this year, does that need-based aid represent? Then we're going to give you a discount, the ability to purchase at a discounted price at the same percentage discount, the iPad 2. And we think that's fair. I mean, we're talking about families who cannot afford the full cost of attendance, and so we're trying to take that into consideration. We're going to raise some money to help do that, quite frankly. We're going to cap that at 50%, though, so we're not going to be funding more than 50% of the cost of the device through tuition assistance. So an example I have on here, a family receiving $3,000 in need-based aid, give or take 27% of tuition, would get a 27% discount on the iPad, and thus a net cost of about $364. Okay, so this letter kind of outlines that, and then if I get out of this, there'll be a form that those families will use, and it'll look almost exactly like this, and it'll say, okay, here's the price of the device, here's the discount, and that's all merge code there. So there's a certain percentage. So here's the discounted price. We do have to pass along sales tax because we're selling you a product. You're not tax exempt. And then there will be a service fee, and I'll explain that a little bit in a second. And then there's a total cost for the device. The service fee essentially is because families have the option of paying, families receiving tuition assistance have the option of paying for the device in the same mechanism in which they pay their tuition. And quite frankly, most families who receive tuition assistance don't pay in a one-payment option. So, I understand if you're sitting here and you don't receive tuition assistance, you're going, well, this is different for me. Well, yeah, the reality of affording Cathedral is different for families who receive tuition assistance. So I'm glad to talk about that on an individual basis, but this is the letter, that was the letter, that families will be getting, probably leaving my office on Monday. So each family receiving need-based assistance will receive something, and it'll show it'll give your family's situation as the specific example within your letter. So you'll know what would have happened this year had we gone to this a year ago. Makes sense? Clear as mud. So, yeah, you can see why I was so excited to come up here and talk to you tonight. But you will have to opt in using that form, because what we'll do is we'll actually purchase the devices for those families and then kind of resell at a discounted price. We do not envision for the vast majority, for the non-financial aid families, there's not a cathedral purchase you pay over time option. There's just not, it's just not something we want to do in terms of carrying a bunch of capital expense. I mean, it could be, hundreds of thousands of dollars of expense that we would pay interest on and things of that nature. So we've opted not to go that route. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what that's going to look like and try to address that issue of what that looks like, especially for families receiving tuition assistance, because I was already asked twice tonight about it. So we know it's a common question. Obviously, I'll be around for Q&A and be glad to answer questions. Next up is Mrs. Lisa Ford, phenomenal math teacher who happens to be our vice principal for academic affairs.
And Dwayne won the lottery for talking about the financial stuff. I won the lottery for being last on the agenda. I need to say, first of all, that I am not like Patty, who loves technology. I'm the dinosaur here, and it scares me to death, frankly. But I have my handy-dandy iPad, and the other night, I was sitting there diligently trying to figure out how am I going to use this in my pre-calculus classroom. And one of my darling children came over and said, "Mom, you've got to see this." And I know you find it hard to believe by my stylish wardrobe, but we are a family of nerds. And one of my darling kids figured out that we can graph parametric equations in 3 dimensions, and it is the coolest thing. I wanted to bring it tonight, but Mr. Warland told me I couldn't, so you'll have to come see me privately. It really is amazing. Seriously. Like the graphing calculator did 20 years ago, this is going to be a huge time saver. We are going to be able to illustrate without mechanically having to physically plot a bunch of points and mess around with a bunch of arithmetic. We're going to actually be able to see the math in action, and it really is going to be something that even people like me are going to be able to use. But my purpose tonight is to address the textbook issue. I forget who it was, but when somebody first mentioned it, everyone clapped, thinking, yes, no more books. You are definitely not, you're not going to have to buy as many books as you have bought up to this point. However, I don't think it's reasonable at this point. This is a constantly moving target, but I don't think at this point it's reasonable to think you're not going to have to buy any books. Right now, 63% of the current books that we use on our book list are available digitally. We are encouraging our teachers to think about, like Mr. Bonchbach has done, maybe not actually using a textbook. We already have 3 or 4 teachers who use teacher-created materials and no textbook. And with the iPad and all of that amazing app stuff, it's going to be easier for teachers to create their own curriculum. This will, of course, be closely monitored to assure that your kids are learning what they're supposed to be learning. But instead of having one textbook, a teacher may choose to adopt a chapter out of this book, a paper that somebody's written at a university, and a couple chapters out of another book or something like that, and actually individualize the curriculum for that course, and we are encouraging that. Some of the books that are available digitally are actually more expensive currently than they are if you actually physically buy the book. That's a problem. Obviously, we don't want to cost you more money with all this. Like I said, this is a constantly moving target. In the last 3 weeks, we have had a bunch of changes already. In the information availability of books that we've received. We will meet with our current textbook company, provider MBS, next month, but we are researching other avenues of obtaining books. Sometimes, actually, we've discovered there are resources that privately we can go to outside of the textbook publishers and obtain these materials more cheaply and more efficiently. So I guess what I really just want to say is we are looking at this very, very carefully. All textbook decisions will be made by teachers. As much as we love our tech people, textbook decisions will be made by the teachers, and any kind of alternative textbook stuff will be really analyzed carefully by ultimately Mr. Worland to make sure that your kids are getting the very best that they can get. So anyway, that's it. Have a great evening, and we're going to answer questions now.
I didn't high step enough there. Okay, I'm just going to kind of moderate this. You heard the experts. You heard a lot of them. And this is the time where we really wanted to hear what you had to say. So I know we got an extra mic, so if we need to, we'll pass the mic around. But let's start with questions, and I'll either answer them or we'll direct them to the person that can best answer those.
There we go. Sorry, it's on mute. One question. I have the iPad 1. We have iPad 2s. iPad 3s are coming. An iPad 1, for everything that the students need to do, is sufficient enough for them to have. So if you have an iPad 1 and one of the students, you want to give it a hand-me-down, that will be just fine. The advantage of the iPad 2 is, of course, the camera, a little bit better battery, a little bit lighter. But for the most part, quite honestly, everything that they're going to be do academically, the iPad 1 worked just fine. Over time, yeah, the iPad 2 is definitely faster than the iPad 1, and you can see that, you can notice that. But quite honestly, that's why I didn't buy the iPad 2. I give everyone else the iPad 2. I'm waiting for the iPad 3. There's going to be times where that's going to move. You may want to say, okay, to answer your question, maybe one gets the iPad 3 and the other one gets the iPad 1. You're going to need two. Each child needs to have their own iPad, and that's okay. That may not be fair, so if they're twins, who's the oldest? Throw a coin. I don't know. If they were brothers, let them put punching bags on them. I don't know. But that's not an easy question. I mean, that's a family decision, but every student's going to need this, and it's not an easy target to hit, but it is absolutely transformationally essential for the kids. The question was, how are we, if we're not going to mandate it for the seniors, how are we going to transition those seniors into using it with and without? Right. Here's the options. Seniors can opt into the program. So if the seniors do want to purchase an iPad, they can buy an iPad. We're not stopping them from buying one. The only difference is the students that are on financial aid for seniors will not be able to opt in. We're only putting in the financial component for freshmen through juniors. That may seem a little unfair, but the reality is we didn't want to impose a mandate for the seniors if we know they're going to college the following year. Because quite honestly, if I was going to senior, they need a laptop. They may need a iPad too, but there's a difference. We needed to do something what was best for our school, and we wanted to be conscientious for that.
Like from the teacher's aspect, you mean? Well, that's one of the things that teachers that have mixed classrooms are thinking about right now. So when they're planning their lessons, every teacher has this right now. And the most important thing I think they also have is the little white cord that puts their iPad up on the smart board. So they're thinking about that. So again, the underclassmen in the classes will have one. Everything that the teacher wants to show them will be up on the smart board. Raleigh mentioned also we will have loaner iPads. We already have a set of 20 in our library right now that they'll be able to check out. So we are talking to those teachers, and they'll be thinking about that. They could share. You could do something in class where they share with a partner, but they're going to have to think about that one at the beginning of the year. But again, They can always project from their own laptop, and then we have other laptops that they'll be able to share from around the school. Yes, absolutely. I think so because they know, again, this is about the students right now, and this is about teaching and learning. They know that's the world they're going to. So, again, we're adding the iPad 2s, but remember I said we already had so many other pieces of technology that they were using. So, yes, they have them in their hands right now, and it would be best if the seniors have those. And, again, we're going to have loaners that they can check out. We're going to try and have classrooms, or not classroom set, department sets where they could go and use them in a department. So absolutely, we definitely want the senior teachers using this as well because Raleigh talked about a little bit of why we chose the iPad 2 over the laptops. We see iPads as a teaching and learning tool. It's about what I'm going to deliver to the students as a teacher. Laptops are more, that's individualized. How am I going to study? How am I going to take notes? What am I going to create from this? I might create a paper or I might create a PowerPoint. But the iPad, I'm going to deliver instruction through that. So even right now, those senior teachers have that. And with the smart boards, they have that. They can still deliver that instruction. So absolutely, senior teachers are going to be using it just as much.
One thing I want to add too is just to make sure this year.
Obviously, we don't want to cost you more money with all this. Like I said, this is a constantly moving target. In the last 3 weeks, we have had a bunch of changes already. In the information availability of books that we've received, we will meet with our current textbook company provider, MBS, next month. But we are researching other avenues of obtaining books. Sometimes, actually, we've discovered there are resources that privately we can go to outside of the textbook publishers and obtain these materials more cheaply and more efficiently. So I guess what I really just want to say is we are looking at this very, very carefully. All textbook decisions will be made by teachers. As much as we love our tech people, textbook decisions will be made by the teachers, and any kind of alternative textbook stuff will be really analyzed carefully by ultimately Mr. Worland to make sure that your kids are getting the very best that they can get. So anyway, that's it. Have a great evening, and we're going to answer questions now.
Didn't high step enough there. Okay, I'm just going to kind of moderate this. You heard the experts. You heard a lot of them. And this is the time where we really wanted to hear what you had to say. So I know we got an extra mic, so if we need to, we'll pass the mic around. But let's start with questions, and I'll either answer them or we'll direct them to the person that can best answer those.
There we go. Sorry, it was on mute. One question. I have the iPad 1. We have iPad 2s. iPad 3s are coming. An iPad 1 for everything that the students need to do is sufficient enough for them to have. So if you have an iPad 1 and one of the students, you want to give it a hand-me-down, that will be just fine. The advantages of the iPad 2 is, of course, the camera, a little bit better battery, a little bit lighter. But for the most part, quite honestly, everything that they're going to be do academically, the iPad 1 will work just fine. Over time, yeah, the iPad 2 is definitely faster than the iPad 1, and you could see that, you could notice that. But quite honestly, that's why I didn't buy the iPad 2. I give everyone else the iPad 2. I'm waiting for the iPad 3. There's going to be times where that's going to move. You know, you may want to say, okay, to answer your question, maybe one gets the iPad 3 and the other one gets the iPad 1. You're going to need two. Each child needs to have their own iPad, and that's okay. That may not be fair. So if they're twins, who's the oldest? Throw a coin. I don't know if they were brothers, let them put punching bags on them. I don't know. But that's not an easy question. I mean, that's a family decision. But every student's going to need this, and it's not an easy target to hit. But it is absolutely transformationally essential for the kids. The question was, how are we, if we're not going to mandate it for the seniors, how are we going to transition those seniors into using it with and without? Right. Here's the options. Seniors can't opt into the program. So if the seniors do want to purchase an iPad, they can buy an iPad. We're not stopping them from buying one. The only difference is the students that are on financial aid for seniors will not be able to opt in. We're only putting in the financial component for freshmen through juniors. That may seem a little unfair, but the reality is we didn't want to impose a mandate for the seniors if we know they're going to college the following year. Because quite honestly, if I was going to senior, they need a laptop. They may need a iPad too, but there's a difference. We needed to do something what was best for our school, and we wanted to be conscientious for that.
Like from the teacher's aspect, you mean? Well, that's one of the things that teachers that have mixed classrooms are thinking about right now. So when they're planning their lessons, every teacher has this right now. And the most important thing I think they also have is the little white cord that puts their iPad, up on the smart board. So they're thinking about that. So again, the underclassmen in the classes will have one. Everything that the teacher wants to show them will be up on the smart board. Raleigh mentioned also we will have loaner iPads. We already have a set of 20 in our library right now that they'll be able to check out. So we are talking to those teachers, and they'll be thinking about that. They could share. You could do something in class where they share with a partner, but they're going to have to think about that one at the beginning of the year. But again, they can always project from their own laptop, and then we have other laptops that they'll be able to share from around the school. Yes, absolutely. I think so because they know, again, this is about the students right now, and this is about teaching and learning. They know that's the world they're going to. So, again, we're adding the iPad 2s, but remember I said we already had so many other pieces of technology that they were using. So, yes, they have them in their hands right now, and it would be best if the seniors have those. And, again, we're going to have loaners that they can check out. We're going to try and have classrooms, or not classroom set, department sets where they could go and use them in a department. So absolutely, we definitely want the senior teachers using this as well because Raleigh talked about a little bit of why we chose the iPad 2 over the laptops. We see iPads as a teaching and learning tool. It's about what I'm going to deliver to the students as a teacher. Laptops are more, that's individualized. How am I going to study? How am I going to take notes? What am I going to create from this? I might create a paper or I might create a PowerPoint. But the iPad, I'm going to deliver instruction through that. So even right now, those senior teachers have that. And with the smart boards, they have that. They can still deliver that instruction. So absolutely, senior teachers are going to be using it just as much.
one thing I want to add too is just to make sure, this year we allowed students to bring their laptops. For those seniors, if they have a laptop, they could bring the laptop to class next year. Okay, so that's the other thing. If they have a laptop, that could be their supplemental tool if you don't want to buy an iPad. You could always buy an iPad, but the laptop will still work. If the students already have a laptop, I mean, they could bring the laptop with an iPad, but the laptop for the freshmen through juniors does not replace the iPad. Okay, because we're going to be using that. We understand that a lot of people may be frustrated because they may have already bought a laptop for their child, and that's a pretty major expense. Laptop, one of the things too is we're not getting rid of any of our computer labs. We have 7 computer labs that are used for instruction that the English department still may want to use. So we're still keeping that. So if the teacher feels like, you know what, I need to go in the writing lab and we need to use keyboards or something different, we're going to do that. This is the first year. So realize that there's things that we're not going to get, we're going to learn a lot from how the teachers are using it, how the students are using it. And that's part of being a model. We're going to make mistakes, but we're going to learn from them too. We do not think in any way that this was a mistake. Realize it's taken us 2 years to come up to the decision. And not everyone's going to like that decision. But I'll tell you, once you see the kids use this equipment, it is unbelievable. What they're doing with the teachers is unbelievable. Okay, maybe you had a question in the back.
As I heard Raleigh and Dwayne talking about the iPads, it sounded to me like the administration and the financial aid families would be purchased in one block, which would of course make them less expensive because that's the way Apple sells them to colleges. I'm going to call provost right away and find out for sure. And can we order some as another pool then for families that are not on financial aid and possibly, because do I understand that you're purchasing singly and as a group?
For the families that are going to be on financial aid, we're going to order all of those iPads in May. We're going to wait as long as possible, and then they take about 2 to 3 weeks for them to arrive. So they will be purchased in bulk. That is correct. And the purpose for that is, again, for those students that are on financial aid only. I'm going to have Dwayne answer one question here, too, and then I'll come back to your second question that you asked.
The only reason that we are opting for the bulk purchase for financial aid families, otherwise, quite frankly, we wouldn't do it because there's just not enough of a discount. There's a slight discount, but it will take more people hours at Cathedral than that savings would accumulate to, quite frankly, in terms of dollar cost, personnel cost for the school to administer the purchase, distribution, et cetera, to the whole student body. The only reason we're doing it for the financial aid families in that manner is that otherwise we have 2 choices. We would either have to issue some sort of voucher or cash to the families. We opt not to do that. The other option would be, I'm trying to think, I lost my train of thought there because I got so hung up on that one. The other option, I guess, would be that, I'm trying to think, I lost it. I had 2. But there's not a mechanism for discounting the cost, especially as variable as it's going to be, which we think is the fair way to do it. The other thing I would add is we're doing that for financial aid families because we provide tuition assistance on a total cost of attendance, which includes mandatory fees and other expected fees.
And that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I think my question was to get the total cost of education, which would include, of course, fees and of course to keep student responsibility where it should be, centered on the student. This is not your iPad. This is Cathedral's iPad or part part of your tuition, I think that at least in the students that I know, that makes a little bit more impact to that property safety. If it's not, well, it's my iPad, not so much. And so I was asking that question about.
I think it's important to note it is their iPad. It does not belong to Cathedral. So it from a personal responsibility standpoint, it is theirs. Cathedral will have no ownership of the devices. So what will happen is we will, for the tuition assistance families would be a great example. We are providing a discounted purchase option for those families. I remember my other point. For financial aid families, it's a cash flow reality. You know, we would, without giving them cash to go buy the iPad, we would discount tuition by the, call it $200 discount on the iPad. But that family that, quite frankly, in many cases, has a little difficulty going out and throwing out a bunch of cash at one time would then have to turn around and go buy the iPad at the full cost. And for those families, it's just much more difficult. I mean, if you understood the conversations I have with those families, in some cases, it's just sometimes incredibly difficult to turn around and do lump sums of cash that get pretty large. So those are the two reasons why we've opted for this route. But a point of clarification is the device will not belong to Cathedral. We are selling it to those families at that discounted price. It no longer it never is our property, other than during that brief transactional period where we purchase it, pass it along to the family, but it does belong to the family.
Yes, ma'am in the back in the purple. The question was the optional fee for the protection plan, will that be a yearly cost? No, that is the cost of the device for the duration of the warranty that exists, or the damage protection. Let me tell you a couple of things. Apple is changing a lot of things. Everyone knows that the new iPhone 4S has been released. They changed the warranty plan for that phone to include damage protection. That is the first time they've ever done that. Apple has told me directly that they plan on doing this for the iPads as well in their future sales. We don't know what that means at that point in time. They've never included damage protection. Apple told us, the reps. I have somebody from Elan Technologies that would like to speak, please.
All right, my name is Ryan Grimes again. The accidental damage is a 2-time per 2-year coverage, meaning that you can break your iPad twice in the 2 years that it's covered, and it's a $49 exchange fee. And it doesn't matter what you've done to it. Run over with your car, drop it in your toilet, whatever. Apple will replace it for $49, and you walk out of the Apple store with a new to you iPad, or iPad 2. Yes? Yes, that is correct. The $49 fee per 2 incidents is additional to the coverage itself. Yes. That is different. Apple has never had an accidental damage clause in their support agreements forever. It's always been, if you broke it, I'm sorry, you need to buy a new one. That covers for 2 years. You get out of the box, you get a 1-year warranty covering hardware and software, meaning that if your iPad doesn't turn on, if your home button stops working, if your iPad overheats or anything like that, Apple will cover that. If you drop it, if you crack the screen, if you get water in there, and yes, there are liquid sensors all over the place in there, they will know if you spilled water on it. It is not covered, and Apple will be able to tell if that has happened to your device. Apple won't even let us do anything with them because they'll penalize us if we return a device that has liquid damage to it. The good thing is that they're pretty durable, and out of, I'd say, 2,000 or 3,000 that we've deployed, we've seen one come back that somebody set on their wheel of their car and backed up. And it was shaped like this. Yes? No, it will not be covered unless you get the accidental damage. It's on the iPhone 4S for sure. It should be on the iPads as soon as Apple gets through. They're having a hard week. They're getting a lot of stuff out the door, and once the dust settles, everything's going to be updated, and we'll know exactly what the terms will be for iPads and iPhones and all those devices. That is AppleCare. It's actually called AppleCare Plus.
The question was loss and theft. Well, one of the wonderful things that Apple did from the very beginning, and this is something that they have with their phones, is a program called Find Me, or Apple Find Me. It's a program that embedded into the iPads as well as your phones, it's GPS trackable. There is a service that is free from Apple that if your Apple iPad was stolen or it's lost somewhere, you can activate the GPS detection from a computer and it will tell you where it's at. You also have the ability, parents pay attention, this is very important, if they have the iPad in their backpack and it's on, you can see where they're at if they're at their friend's house. You can also send a message to the iPad and say, come home right now. You have that ability. We will show you how to do that. That is an essential piece. That is free. So you will be able to find a lost or stolen laptop. There are many devices, there are many examples that has actually happened. Mr. Ilan, Ryan?
And from personal experience, I have two boys of my own. You can also send a noise to it that even if your phone or your iPad is muted, it will play a noise and you can hear it anywhere in your house.
I just want to tell you a quick story. One of our counselors this summer, unfortunately, had their house robbed. I mean, they were asleep upstairs. The robbers took TVs, they took jewelry, they took anything that had any value, wiped them out, and they were upstairs. They left her iPad 2 open because they obviously were professional robbers, and they knew that could be tracked, and they left that right on the kitchen table, didn't touch it. So that tells you a little bit, at least the robbers know, don't want to mess with those things. So if somebody does steal them, they probably ought to be careful. Next question. Yes.
The question was, you have two children, and through your experiences from probably professional resources, how do you protect children from access to the internet in probably unprotected areas? Basically that the question, sir? Okay. A couple of things. The ones that were recommended are the Wi-Fi, the general access. It just connects to the wireless. So if you don't get there's another unit called the cellular iPad where they're always on the internet. There's a couple of ways that you can protect them from accessing inappropriate sites. It's a little technical, but we're definitely going to provide that type of protection services. There is a service where whenever they get to the internet, they're going to use very specific, the best way I could say is internet yellow pages that we will inform parents if you use this information, let me go ahead and connect this right here because I want to show you. If you use this information, it will prevent them from going to sites you don't want them to go. There's also a lot of third-party services that will also report access of where they've gone on these devices, but that's going to be in addition to. Again, one of the primary things we're trying to teach the kids is digital citizenship. And that may be a hard thing to do. Remember, they're teenagers, they're going to make mistakes. We're in a partnership with you as parents, and we're going to train you parents as well how to monitor and control this. The question is very technical, but there is ways that you can monitor their internet access from sites. Now, I'll tell you, kids are smart. You know, they're going to be able to you're not going to stop them from going everywhere. They're going to, the more roadblocks you provide them, the more ways they're going to find ways to get around it. There is one thing on here that's called enable restrictions. And if you notice on the internet right here, as a parent, you could lock these down. So if you don't want them to access certain things, we could lock these, or you as a parent could lock these devices down. So as a parent, you may have access to certain information, but as a student, you may want to lock that down. So again, there's some things that we're going to work with you as parents to protect your students when they're away from school. It's never perfect. The internet in and of itself, if anybody were to tell you that you could protect your children all the time, they're lying. But it's our responsibility to teach them as much as we can. And it's an effort that's going to be both of our parts, because we know we're putting them in areas that could potentially be at risk. But we're going to try. And if parents have recommended solutions, a lot of parents are in the business industry, please come talk to me. One thing that we're using for any of you technical folks, we're going to be using a program called Mobile Iron. Now, for many parents, it doesn't mean anything. But it's a program that does help us monitor the installation and application use of the iPads. One thing, too, I want to make sure everyone understands this so they hear it from my words, from my lips. We are not going to monitor your children when they're at home. That's a very big personal and security issue. We do not want to do that. But we're going to train you and show you how you can protect your children. Again, this equipment belongs to you, the students, and the families. We're going to do our best as we can to train the parents, and we know that there's going to be many stages. So hopefully we'll be able to answer your question, and you'll feel confident that we're going to be in this together. Okay? Next question. Ma'am, now purple in the back, and then you in the white. I've been prior to coming here to Cathedral High School, I've been here for 7 years, I was a value-added reseller. So I used to sell this stuff before. The answer is no. Apple controls the pricing across the board from everyone. If they tell Best Buy and they tell Fry's and they tell some internet company you have to sell it at $4.99, they have to sell it at $4.99 or they cannot sell the device. That's how they control it. So we'd like to have that opportunity. But right now, given what we have and what we're going, any other high school has the same issue. If Guerin High School, if you buy a laptop through Guerin, you do get a discount. But if you want to buy an iPad through their same store, you can't. It's the same price point. It's $4.99 for us. It's $4.99 for colleges. So we would love to do that, but there isn't a vendor right now that Apple will allow to do that because they want to control the premium price. Ma'am. Correct. Right, the loaner program, we're still developing that. Right now we have to figure out how many we need as spares in order for damage protection. So if they damage it and they need something in, or let's say if they forget it. But realize, let's say they forget it, we're going to make sure that it's not an incentive to forget it every day. There probably will be a financial penalty if they keep on forgetting it for more than 5 days or something, because otherwise they'll always forget it. And then we're not teaching them that responsibility that they have to maintain that equipment. We're also going to provide reports for families, too, of how many times they actually want to loan one. Let's say they don't tell you. We'll tell you. How many times they said, did you remember your iPad? Did you forget it? That responsibility has to happen now, so before they get to college. Yep. Yep. Will be the checkout. We're not sure yet, to be honest.
Raleigh, I think that's going to be more from the teacher.
Yep.
Yes, that would be like, let's say I'm Joe Vollmer and he knows that he has 10 seniors in there who do not have them. When he's planning his lessons, that would be his responsibility to come get that classroom set and bring them to his class. That's not going to be up to the students. Okay, oh my gosh, now I need it as a senior. We're talking about seniors right now that choose not to get them. I'm going to need a 7th period, I'm going to need a 4th period. No, and again, we're working with the teachers to plan ahead and think about that. That would be the teachers getting those, bringing them, just like they would with anything else. We have little remotes right now. The teachers would come get those. I'm going to use those for my lesson today. I know every student needs one. I will bring those to class for those senior teachers. That would be their responsibility.
I'm going to go
if
ahead
they
and
have a lesson like that.
do a couple more questions because I want to be respectful of your time. We mentioned it was 8:30, so I want to make sure we keep that on time. Ma'am, you've been waiting patiently. Okay? Yes. Yes. That is correct. Yes. Okay, that's a great question. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Basically, you have two children, and you want to go ahead and buy the app. Let me explain how this app works. Those 3 applications that we talked about is going to be a technology fee. That represents $60 if you were to go buy it. So realize that's a lot of money that we're including in there. So there's a small fee associated with just supporting the technology for that. They're going to be issued through vouchers, so every student will have them. So there's not going to be a discount associated if you have 2 children, you only give it to 1 voucher for family. Every student has to have it. Now there's a couple of ways around of installing one app to multiple devices. So her question was, can I install this one license to multiple devices? Technically you can, but legally we can't do it that way because that would be then cheating Apple from, that's not the responsible way we have to do it. Can you do that? Yes. But we have to have a model that Apple represents and understands, because they're supporting us through this process too, that we're keeping the licensing as honest as possible. If it's per student, they want to have the application per student. But yes, you can do that. So I don't want to deter from that. Can you have multiple devices using the same app? You can have up to 5 devices, or actually unlimited devices in your iTunes account. Realize too, the other major component to this is iTunes. Every student they should have their iTunes account. That's another component that we're going to figure out. Do you use a family iTunes account? Does each student have their own iTunes account? How do you manage purchases for those students on the iTunes account? That's one thing that we're working with Apple to say what works, what's the best model. Realize this is new. I mean, high schools are just starting this right now, so we're looking at other schools that have started that program and saying, okay, how did you do that? But we're going to work with you families, and we're going to have another meeting in the spring that's not only going to talk about the books, but it's also going to talk about application deployment. Okay. Next question. Yes. Yes. For example, if some of you have devices right now, if they're wireless, go ahead and try Facebook right now. You won't be able to do it. You join our wireless, it's blocked. We provide internet security right now. It's a public access, but we provide some pretty good security, and we also know the devices. One thing that the children are supposed to do, or they're going to have to do, they're going to have to register their iPad device with us before they start school. There's going to be a little bit of boot camp we're talking about, and you're going to get some more information about that prior to school starts. We're going to know which student has what device and where they've been. So we will be able to record what they're doing here. When they go home, we're going to give them to you. We're going to help you with what they do on the internet, but realize that's going to be your part on helping us to make sure these kids are doing the right thing. Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, that's a great question. His child has a high-end Apple laptop, MacBook, and can you run the apps on the MacBook? No. You cannot run iPad apps on any laptop. There's a big difference. So there's 400,000 apps. They're meant for the iPad. Laptops run applications, so that's why there's a little bit difference. But I mean, that's inherent. So they're separate ways of delivering applications and how to use it. They're similar in their regards, but they're technically different. So I hope I answered that, but they're really not the same thing. So if you use Pages, which is how you write Notepad, it's different than you write one Windows, Word, or Pages on a MacBook. They're just a little different. They're similar, but they're not exactly the same. Yes, you can share a document. I apologize if that's the answer to your question. If they create a document on their iPad, can they open it on their laptop? Absolutely. So, and the other thing too is Apple just released their new operating system, which will allow students to store their files on the internet. So if they create it on their iPad, they will be able to access those documents from anywhere. We're also going to provide some of this, and you're going to get more information about that But students will be able to access their files from everywhere. I showed you how to do it on their iPad themselves. That's only the beginning. One more question. Who wants to raise their hand for the last question? The question was audiobooks, like audio textbooks? Absolutely. Absolutely. There are audio textbooks that will dictate back the words. It's a great add-on for those students that need to have the auditory learning. I want to thank everyone for coming here. I want to thank all the teachers that were here, so please, parents, give them applause. This is a great thing. You will get this will be available online as a recording, so for those of your families that weren't able to make it, please realize that it will be available probably the first of next week. Thank you and have a good night. We'll be here for more questions.